In this video, I'll review the idea of putting functions in Arduino that have multiple lines of instruction and make your loop a little bit easier to understand and manage. So we've already talked about define statements where I might define LED on as a keyword for digital write pin 13 high, right? And I'm going to do the same thing for LED off. And I think I'm going to declare two constants. Oh, you know what? We'll make them definitions because there's no need. So the reason for define statements is it doesn't use any memory. What your compiler does is every time it sees this specific case-sensitive characters in this order, it's going to replace those characters with this text. And so instead of having to write this every time, I have fewer words to write. And instead of defining a one-line function call, I have this keyword that doesn't take up memory space. And so I can define, for example, a short blink. I can't use the word short. I always forget that. I'm going to do quick blink as 400 milliseconds and define slow as, I can't remember what the assignment, but I'll do 800 milliseconds here. Okay, and so so let's say I wanted to do some function that was quick blink, right? I wanted to call it quick blink. And so in my void so I will create a function called quick blink. And you already know about functions. So when we set up pin mode and we pass it 13 and output, that's calling a function somewhere in the libraries that this pin gets set to output. And that makes it ready to have an LED on it. So you already know what a function is. What you've never done is define your own custom function. So here I'm going to define a void function because it doesn't return anything, and I'm going to call it quick blink. And in here I'm going to turn the LED on. I'm going to delay quick. I'm going to turn the LED off and delay quick. And so now, instead of putting all of these lines here, I'm reading through the English, and quick blink means I'm doing a quick blink. And part of the reason why Arduino is such an interesting programming environment is that a lot of the work we do in Arduino are these function calls, and so it reads a lot like English. When I say delay number, that's a function call. Somewhere in the library, there is a set of instructions that allow a delay command to take that many milliseconds. And so we already have a lot of functions in Arduino. So if you want some custom functions, you can do it this way. I could also declare a loop that says, that is the letter S. And it turns out you can have a single letter as your function call. And this would be, you know, a quick, let's see, S is the quick blink, right? And I could just write that 3 times, right? Now, as soon as I start repeating lines of code, I should probably pay attention, because the thing about programming is you should never have to do redundant instructions, because this is really a loop where I have 3 iterations of the same line of code. So I starts at 0, it's less than 3, it increases +1 each time, and it does that instruction, right? And so really, you know, if you're finding yourself writing the same line of code, if you find yourself copy-pasting code, what you should think about is there a more efficient way to write this? And so if LED on, delay quick, LED off, delay quick, I could certainly up here just copy and paste that 3 times. Whew, right? There's nothing wrong with that. That would be S 3 quick blinks. And then, I could come down here and say, oh, 3 long blinks. And so that would be LED on, delay, what did I call it? Slow? Yes, slow. LED off, delay, quick. And then I copy and paste it 3 times. And there's nothing wrong with this, but now, I'm looking through loop and I have got to think about what I did here, and I've got to remember what those lines of code mean. Whereas if I define a quick blink, or if I define the letter O and say 4, so why don't I just go ahead and copy that. And instead of quick blink, I'm going to copy paste my slow blink. And now I've got the letter O, right? And so think about how you're implementing this. There are absolutely many different ways to write your code. And so write it in the way that makes the most sense to you, but also for those of you finding this simple, try to make it a more elegant solution where instead of writing the same code over and over and over again, you're using for loops strategically, or you're using function calls strategically to make your code a little bit more efficient. The last thing I would say is, and it might be subtle here, but indenting matters. It makes your code more readable, and commenting matters. So I put comments in where to help me. If I was to open this up in 6 weeks, I'm not going to remember what I did in 6 weeks. I'm lucky if I remember in 6 days. So these comments help bring meaning to the programming. An example of indenting, though, is here, right? So in my function, I indent my for loop, and then I indent the instructions inside my for loop. And then I can just easily see at a glance what goes where. This got a little longer than I expected. I hope helpful. Questions welcome. Think about using functions and for loops and such to help improve your programming skills.